So let me show you what I'm talking about. One of the things that I want to do here is I'm likely to use this clear function that I'm teaching you in multiple places. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a new class, and I'm doing it as a class rather than as an ID because that allows me to use it in multiple places in a page. So I'm going to create a class called clear, and what I'm going to apply to that is I'm going to do a clear both, and that's just because that will clear things on both sides. And then let's go in and investigate. That in itself does nothing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back down into just after box number 4. I'm going to get outside of box 4 so that I'm at the end of after the boxes and before the end of the main div. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a paragraph. And when I just do the paragraph, there's two things that you see happen. One is that it popped up to the side and it introduced this white line. So we'll deal with this popping up to the side first. That's because it hasn't cleared. So what we want to do is, if you recall, we just added that class of clear. So if I go into that paragraph that I've just added, and I set it up with the class of clear, then what that's going to do is it's going to take and it's going to apply that class of clear to that. And what that clear is, as you recall, is that I've told it to apply a clear both to that paragraph. So that drops that down. It reclaims this space in the natural document flow, and then it continues the natural document flow here below. Now you'll also notice that that has introduced that space there. That is being picked up. That is actually the margin for that paragraph. So I'm just going to add a addition to where I created a margin of 0 for the unordered list before. I'm going to do the same thing for the paragraph now, and you'll notice that clears that out. So just using that multiple rule section there so that I didn't have to do a bunch of rules that apply the same rule for the UL or the P, and that's what we've done there. And so that is the easiest way to reclaim that document flow and that space over there. So now let's go on to the next one, and so I'm going to clean out that paragraph. I'm going to leave that clear rule up in there just because in case I decide to use it later. But another thing that we can do is that we can use the overflow property. And the overflow property we haven't talked about yet, but what the overflow property does is it says that if there is more content that fits into an element or the space that's available for an element, how do I handle that extra information? And so what the options are for that, and I'm going to go into main here, and I'm going to go ahead and type overflow, and your options are auto, hidden, inherit, scroll, or visible. Again, the inherit and auto are that's kind of the way things are going to do anyway. So really we're talking about hidden, scroll, or visible. Visible means that content is just going to overflow into the other elements, and they're going to, it's just going to overlap. So that's not one of the options. Scroll introduces a set of scroll bars, just like you have on your browser. When there's more content either horizontally or vertically, scroll automatically inserts scroll bars, and that will work for doing this, but it introduces those scroll bars. So we can use hidden, and that will take control of that space, or auto would add the scroll bars if it's necessary. I'm going to choose hidden here. And then what you see is that goes ahead and it reclaims that property, because what you're doing is saying, hey, let me take back all of my space. Anything that fits outside of that space is going to be hidden. So it sort of reclaims the natural, the normal flow for that div if this information hadn't been out of the natural flow, if that makes sense. And like I said, you could have also used auto, and that would have done the same thing. But with auto, there will be times when it will add scroll bars where it doesn't necessarily make sense that there should be scroll bars there. So sometimes those aren't going to work. Sometimes hidden isn't going to work, and that depends on some more advanced things that are happening within that space. But until you get to that point, then it's fine. Now there are some other ways that you can claim this, but we're not going to go into them in this circumstances, because it goes into some aspects of CSS that we have not covered yet, and we're not going to cover at this point. So if you're ever getting to the point where you're having problems, you can research a thing called ClearFix. And what ClearFix essentially does is it inserts an invisible element down at the bottom of that, and it makes it so that it thinks that it has content, but that content is null. And so it works in the same way in that it sort of puts a clearing element down there that doesn't actually exist. So that's an advanced technique that we won't go into today, but if you look up ClearFix, that information will be available to you. So now just to finish this lesson out, what we need to do is some just housekeeping sort of stuff. We've got this called floating exercise 1. That's what we saved it at before we went into all that. Let's go ahead and just call that floating exercise 2. And then let's create our, do a save as. Whoops. Didn't I just do that? There we go. So let's name that floating exercise 2, and then save it as floating exercise 2.html. So we save that as floating exercise 2. So we've got floating exercise 1 and floating exercise 2. What I want you to do is go ahead and come into this right here, change that to floating. Change that to floating exercise 1, and in this one here, and you'll have to do this in both of these files. Go ahead and select those. Link floating exercise 1 to floating exercise 1, and floating exercise 2 to floating exercise 2. And save those, make a link to those from your exercises page so that I can check to see what you've been doing, and that will close it out. And I just do that in both of them. So synchronize that, save it up to the server, make sure you've made a link from your exercises page so that I can see what you've got, and that completes this lesson.